Hi everybody, I'm Lady Sylvine and welcome to my realm of purpose. This is the first video in a little bit because I've been off in the real world doing real person busy things. How else do I put that? And I've kind of just been working on my mental health a little bit. So I've been kind of avoiding posting videos because I've just not been able to get into that headspace lately. But here we are, I'm trying to break that cycle so I don't just never post again, so here's a video. Today we're going to go over some character analysis of Solas, specifically the high approval scene right after you get to Skyhold during Inquisition. For some of us, this was the first kiss scene with Solas, but it's more generally remembered as the scene where you return to Haven in a dream. This is a scene triggered by having enough approval with Solas, so if you have low approval you won't be able to prompt Solas with the question that triggered it. This scene gets triggered when you first speak to Solas at Skyhold. You'll need to exhaust him with personal questions. Nothing else will trigger the scene. You can ask him about himself at Haven, or you can do so at Skyhold. Here is that conversation for reference, with the dialogue options in case you're interested.
You strengthen your body to deliver and withstand punishment. The muscles are an enjoyable side benefit. You have chosen a path whose steps you do not dislike because it leads to a destination you enjoy. As have I.
You find the muscles enjoyable?
I meant that you enjoyed having them, presumably.
Ah.
But yes, since you asked. You train to flick a dagger or an arrow to its target. The grace with which you move is a pleasing side benefit.
So you're suggesting I'm graceful?
No. I am declaring it. It was not a subject for debate. You train your will to control magic and withstand possession. Your indomitable focus is an enjoyable side benefit.
Indomitable focus?
Presumably. I have yet to see it dominated. I imagine that the sight would be fascinating.
The entire point of this scene is taking a first step into a trusting, positive relationship with Solas, as you may have guessed. It's very important with a sense of character development, as any story should. With character development you have clear stepping stones, or let's call them map markers of points where a character has a development of sorts. But it's worth mentioning that it's triggered not merely by approval or asking enough questions, but by asking specifically for more information. Fuck me. But by asking specifically for more information about himself. And for Solas, given his true identity and intentions, this is quite a big deal for his character, more than most other companions in the series. And I think people who insist he's a terrible person don't quite appreciate this, because Solas, even without the fen'harel stuff, is generally a very private person. It takes a lot to gain his trust. And I mean his trust, not merely his approval, mechanics-wise. Solas is one of the easiest characters to get approval from, but his ability as a character to trust is pretty slow going. Which is where the dream scene comes in. It's the first step in Solas going out of his way to trust the Inquisitor, to explain his faults and weaknesses and put himself in a vulnerable position, but in a way in which he still does hold control over the situation. He isn't fully committed to friendship quite yet, though I feel like he clearly wants to at this point. He's a very lonely and isolated person, disparaged from spirits, the Fade, the waking world and the people in it. He wants to make connection, and this is the first step into taking the chance to do so. There are a couple of factors going into this scene that I think are important to state before we start analysing it. 1. The entirety of this scene is in a dream. So when the Inquisitor goes to Solas in the Rotunda and asks to speak with him, that is included in the dream, as dialogue afterward implies. And yes, I will go into that discussion after the dream between Solas and the Inquisitor, while they're awake. I just want to establish that he doesn't, knock the Inquisitor out to do the dream scene. Inquisitor goes into the Rotunda, talks to Solas, and all of that is part of the dream to begin with. I just wanted to make that clear to begin with. 2. The Inquisitor throughout the dream is not aware that it's a dream at all, but Solas is 100% aware of it. 3. It doesn't ever get mentioned in game, at least not outright. But this is a scene that reveals that Solas is a dreamer mage, and a very powerful one at that. For reference, if you don't know, a dreamer is a mage that can enter the Fade at will without the aid of blood magic or lyrium, and depending on how powerful, they can do a lot with the Fade in dreams. For instance, the Redcliffe mission in Origins, where you have to go rescue, the kid, Arl Eamon's son, whose name I forget. I'll have it on screen.
How long will Father be sick for? He looks like he's sleeping.
You go into the Fade and you need to go recruit the mages first in order to go into the Fade, because you need a lot of lyrium and a lot of mages to just do that simple task. Dreamer mages can just do that at will. That's how powerful they are when it comes to the Fade and magic. And they can do a lot in the Fade and with dreams. They have a lot of control in there, including consciously interacting with or messing with other people while they are also dreaming. And this scene basically shows that Solas is a very, very powerful dreamer mage. It's kind of insane actually how the game doesn't make a bigger deal out of it, but whatever. The point of this scene is that Solas puts some of his cards on the table for us to see, as requested by the Inquisitor. He shows us he's more powerful than he lets on, and he also lets us know some of his flaws too, which I'll go into as they come up.
Greetings.
I'm interested in what you told me of yourself in your studies. If you have time, I'd like to hear more.
You continue to surprise me. All right, let us talk. Preferably somewhere more interesting than this.
The Inquisitor starts the scene not by asking, but telling Solas that she is interested in him and wants to know more. It mirrors how the previous set of questions started. I'd like to know more about you, Solas. It isn't a specific question that gets asked right away, even if the Inquisitor by this point knows at least a little about Solas. He's a hedge mage. Hedge mage is really fun to say. He's interested in spirits in the Fade, he's bald, and he has a very eloquent way of speaking despite dressing like a man living it rough. The hobopostate. I'm interested in you, I'd like to know more, is an open but distant statement. It's not demanding or accusatory, it's not even very interrogating, which, when you first start asking Solas about himself, he assumes is what you're doing, interrogating him. But Inke asks this now with a more clear and friendly choice of words.
Why here?
Haven is familiar. It will always be important to you.
We talked about that already.
Solas leads ahead of the Inquisitor, and the pair are silent, as if nothing was being discussed before the scene opens up, on the arrival at a deserted but intact haven. In the background you can hear the chatter of those who inhabited it, but there's not another soul in sight. Solas, being the one in charge, as a dreamer, has ensured that only he and the Inquisitor will be present for this talk. No spirits or demons, or other sleeping dreamers invading this private space. It's cozy, in a way, intended to be platonically intimate. Despite this, there's something right out the gate that's off and a contradiction to this bonding moment between them. The scene plays out with Solas in front and the Inquisitor behind for pretty much the entire scene as he leads her around. I use she/her pronouns because my Inquisitor is she/her in this situation. But I am also referring to all Inquisitors, unless I specify otherwise in this script somewhere. I'll let you know, basically. It's as if there's this consistent distance between them. A detachment that speaks to how green their relationship still is at this point, despite this being a willing attempt on Solas's part to open up about himself. But imagine Inke looking ahead at Solas's back so often when she asked for him to open up about himself in this scene. Not even in an intrusive or intimate way, just, you and your studies are interesting, let's talk about that some more. And imagine Solas ahead of her, feeling that presence there behind him. It's a weird dynamic that I'm sure all of us have felt at some point in real life, when we happen to be a bit quicker or slower than someone we're out walking with. But to consistently walk with that distance, it feels so purposeful. And this scene is Solas revealing more about himself. He makes that distance. He doesn't automatically follow or walk beside. In fact, we kind of see it in a scene in Veilguard that I remember specifically, where Felisan, someone we know he was close with, he still walks ahead of, despite the fact that they're in this semi-private moment together, away from where anyone should reasonably see or hear them. But it's a memory, so we hear it in a meta sense.
They've changed their plans. Elganon may be a tyrant, but he is not a fool. That means the relic is genuine. We are close, and Elganon is afraid.
Felisan is his second in command, his general, but he's also his friend. There shouldn't be that formality between them, even in this instance when no one is there to observe this interaction. It's consistent with Solas, which means it's a character trait. It's something that he just does. Even to those he genuinely cares for and has a close relationship with. Except for,
I was not certain you would come.
You were the one who walked away. I never turn my back when my friend needs me.
I'm just saying, I think Mythal did some real damage on Solas and how he handles relationships with others since he took a body. Just gonna put that out there. I think she did some terrible things to his reckoning with what's normal. Anyway, you could argue it's part of his arrogance to walk ahead, as it's kind of rude to speak to someone when you're walking so much in front of them. He just has to feel like he's in charge. But also, walking ahead of someone implies on some level that he trusts them not to attack him while his back is turned. He's dropping his guard. He's feeling confident around someone to have his back turned to them. Solas is leading the Inquisitor here in a literal sense. He's showing her through the dream and trying to take her somewhere, and therefore he takes the lead. But still, when this scene is presented to us in this specific way, it must be purposeful. And given all that we can get out of it from an analytical point of view, it's pretty on point for his character. I'd say the scene did its job, all with this subtlety that you might not consciously pick up on. And part of it's because there's a lot of more noticeable points in this scene that get highlighted, but I wanted to bring attention to the little things, because more often than not in storytelling, these kinds of small details do a lot of the heavy lifting overall when it comes to character building. Action and inaction on a character's part matter just as much as dialogue, whether it's subtle or obvious. With the knowledge that this scene is in the Fade, in a dream of Solas's making, the question of why here is extremely important to understanding the foundation of the scene itself. Solas is leading her here specifically for several reasons. To understand this, we need to look at the scene from Solas's perspective. He wants to talk and form a stronger connection with the Inquisitor, who by this point has reached a level of approval with Solas that he feels some level of trust. Solas wants to be understood, to believe he's someone who is approachable and likeable, not as fen'harel, but simply as Solas. This is him inviting someone not only to know him better, but to enter into his space, his place of safety, of comfort, showing them around the Fade in a dream where they'll both be comfortable and safe. Haven is still safe. There's no Templars or soldiers or gawking people looking at Inquisitor like she's this godsend or savage outsider. It's really sweet. And I think for Solas, this is him playing out the part of him that is still a spirit. Or at least he's trying to hold on to it. He wants to be known as wisdom, and he has no real way to come out and just say that without giving himself away. As well as that, I think he's still learning to be a person, because he isn't a spirit anymore, and his entire experience as an elf, as a man, has been bad. It's been terrible experience after terrible experience, especially when it comes to his relationship with others. Here, he's trying something new, and it works pretty well with every single dialogue branch actually, which is important for his development. Especially since if you've got this scene, you more than likely are taking the route of getting the high approval with Solas, of giving him a happier ending, let's say. You want him to do well, you're not disagreeing with him all the time, if you get what I mean. Solas in this scene is also taking Inquisitor somewhere familiar and important to them. Somewhere he describes as preferably more interesting than the rotunda of Skyhold. But I feel like there is some deception in this proposition, because if we look at the situation in broad terms, Solas and Inquisitor are both dreaming, and it's Inky that has invaded his dream. And that must be so baffling for him as fen'harel, and as a spirit, well, as a former spirit. But the basis of this scene is kind of funny as much as insightful of his character. Regardless of whether or not Inky is a mage, or even if they're a dwarf, they gained the ability to dream with enough focus to track down the Dreadwolf in the Fade. That's hilarious first and foremost, but it's also specifically something only a skilled dreamer mage can do. And those with enough Valerium and blood magic and whatnot. Solas was caught with his pants down, basically, and that makes it all the more interesting because the scene in the dream itself starts in Skyhold, his fortress. If Inky can control dreams that much, and she found something she wasn't supposed to about him, or about any of his plans, because she is in his domain, let's remember, that could lead to a whole headache for Solas and his duplicity within the Inquisition. He needs to get her out of there, and he chose Haven because it was somewhere they both knew, and specifically, as Solas says,
Haven is familiar. It will always be important to you.
He picked somewhere that would evoke a mental and emotional response from her. Somewhere that the pair of them could focus on to keep them there, especially since Inky just lost this place and was pretty attached to it. He specifically says, it will always be important to you. To you. The choice of location is about her, and that's why he chose it. It's somewhere she was vulnerable, where she faced mortal threat and a similar level of homeliness, since this was the home base of the first part of the game, of the Inquisition. It's a warning, a reminder, an anchor for emotion, and something that will keep her from drifting elsewhere and possibly changing the dream again, because apparently she has so much control over it. More so than him, or maybe at least that he just wasn't expecting that event to happen, but I think he's deliberately making certain of the fact that, okay, no, we're here, by the way. We're not going elsewhere. Haven. You remember Haven, don't you? Here. Cool. This is where we're at. Additionally, a last point of this, before we move on, is he doesn't know enough about her to take her somewhere else that's familiar that won't throw her off, or just outright distract them from the point of why they're there having a discussion to begin with. We don't actually see that they did talk about this already, as much as I could find at least. So we can presume either it's one of those dream logic things where Inky thinks they talked about it, or perhaps Solas has made her think they already talked about it, or they were silent up until they got to when the scene officially starts. Maybe they even did discuss it beforehand and it's just one of those wibbly wobbly things and fade to black, fade back into a new scene kind of things. It's just a weird line, especially since Solas doesn't respond to it at all. Although you could argue it's Solas trying to distract her with a change of scenery and put off talking about himself and showing some vulnerability, because being vulnerable with another person, regardless of the circumstances, is difficult, especially for someone like Solas who harbours a great deal of guilt and shame, and of course pride. He's getting more into Haven, and Inky calls him out by saying, "We talked about this, let's move on to what we're actually going to talk about." His body language at the start kind of backs this up, with his expressions hidden from Inquisitor, but not from us, the audience. To me, he looks a bit anxious, like he's in deep thought. It looks kind of awkward for him actually, like he's not quite sure how exactly he's going to go about this. It's just very different from his hands behind his back, chin up swagger he does when he knows he's being watched and he's putting on some kind of display of confidence. And she even pauses after this as she has a sort of suspicious double take, like she knows something's off, and she starts following him a little more hesitantly. why are you being so weird and leading me down into a dungeon jail? The most secluded and bad memory I have of this place that's quote-unquote important and familiar to me. And when they stop, she still stands a step behind him, closer to the exit. And I do think I'm overanalyzing just a bit. Solas, staring at the shackles on the ground where Inquisitor wakes from being in the Fade at the start of the game, reveals that he was here with us while we were unconscious, studying the anchor on our hand. Right off the bat, he just says something so important for a host of reasons. We already knew from Varric that it was Solas who kept us from dying at Haven at the start of the game, but it suddenly becomes more real with the images presented to us, of Solas sitting there beside her while she's shackled, surrounded by soldiers ready to kill her at a moment's notice. And it becomes all the more clear how horrific this scene was, this point of time. The notes we find around Haven earlier in the game. Patient observations. Vain hope. Someone better at this than me takes over before the survivor expires. Notes in case. Day 1. Clammy, shallow breathing. Pulse over fast. Not responsive. Pupils dilated. Mage says her scarring mark is froming with unknown magic. Wish we could station a Templar in here, just in case. Day 2. Pulse normal, breathing normal. Still unresponsive. Careful drop feed of prep. Elfroot extract to hasten her recovery. A lot of thrashing. Mutters about too many eyes. Something about the grey. Encouraging? Day 3. Less thrashing. Some response to stimulus. Vitals seem solid. 2 attempts so far by locals to break into the chantry to kill my patient. All this work to save her life, and will they just execute her? Will inform Lady Cassandra I expect her to wake before the morn. Solas was in a dangerous situation. From the very start, from day 1. It's pretty strongly hinted at that Solas was the mage, talking about the mark, and basically making sure the Inquisitor was not going to die. He and the Inquisitor were in this vulnerable situation together, especially since a Templar was possibly put in with him. We don't know for certain whether or not he was. If there was dialogue suggesting that, please point out in the comments. I actually don't recall it, but it would be so interesting if there was. We certainly knew that there were Templars in there. I feel like there would have been.
My name is Solas, if there are to be introductions. I am pleased to see you still live.
He means I kept that mark from killing you while you slept.
He poses as a long-time apostate who studies spirit magic specifically. For reference, that is the one that's most associated with blood magic, and it's subject to a lot of scrutiny because it delves into spirits and demons and actively making connections with them and the Fade, as shown through this codex from all the way back in Origins. Love you, Origins, chef kiss. Along with that, there are 2 attempts by locals to come down and kill the Inquisitor, and no doubt Solas would get caught in that crossfire.
I sat beside you while you slept, studying the anchor.
I'm glad someone was watching over me.
You were a mystery. You still are.
There was this shared fate kind of energy to what Solas is telling her here, but I want to focus on the fact that he says, studying the anchor, not helping you, which Solas doubles down on when Inky suggests otherwise. She interprets this as an altruistic act, or at least one of compassion, and he quickly and plainly corrects her. He's saying, it wasn't because I was protecting you or watching over you, I was studying you and the anchor. You were a mystery. You still are. I'm still studying you. She was a mystery to be investigated, and looking at this knowing who Solas is and why he was at Haven.
I've wondered, how did you know to approach us, Solas? The breach opened, we were scrambling and barely had time to think, and there you were.
I went to see the breach for myself. I did not know you would be there.
You must not have been far away.
I was not. I'd come to hear of the conclave, but did not want to get close.
Lucky for us, then.
You gave your orb to Corypheus.
Not directly. My agents allowed the Venatori to locate it. The orb had built up magical energy while I lay unconscious for millennia. I was not powerful enough to open it. The plan was for Corypheus to unlock it, and for the resulting explosion to kill him. Then I would claim the orb. I did not foresee a Divinity Magister having learned the secret of effective immortality.
What would have happened if Corypheus had died, and you'd recovered the orb?
I would have entered the Fade using the mark you now bear. Then I would have torn down the veil. As this world burned in the raw chaos, I would have restored the world of my time. The world of the elves.
This all started because of him. It's somewhat ominous that he was keeping her alive just because it was more convenient to do so. It turns this caring gesture, one the Inquisitor interprets from him as this naive but I think highly of you and trust you way, into something cold, clinical and target motivated. Almost like he didn't see her as a person.
You must understand. I awoke in a world where the veil had blocked most people's conscious connection to the Fade. It was like walking through a world of tranquil.
We aren't even people to you?
Not at first. You showed me that I was wrong. Again. That does not make what must come next any easier.
And he says, you still are a mystery, implying that at this point he's not only still confused about what happened at the Conclave, how Inquisitor exactly survived, why she was there, and why did his orb essentially connect to her specifically, and why is she so nice to him for his approval to go up enough to trigger this scene in the first place. Why is she acting like a person when everything he knows about this world is that it's broken because of his actions? It kind of implies maybe it's not so broken. Essentially, he's at a midway point in his mentality regarding the people of current Thedas. He was going through with his plans for destroying the Veil, uncaringly causing the Conclave and keeping that to himself this whole time. And this scene triggers and he's confused, rightfully so. Is this world a little less broken than I thought it was? No, that's absurd. That would make my actions monstrous. So he's stuck at this midway point. Inquisitor is still a mystery that he's pursuing because it's just his nature to try to understand things, and there's something he's reckoning with at this point.
How long can it take to look at a mark on my hand?
A magical mark of unknown origin? Tied to a unique breach in the veil? Longer than you might think.
Solas approves of you asking this, as he does with most questions. As for the back and forth itself, there's a slight hint of zestfulness about it. They're both having this, you're kidding, right? Moment together. She's in a bit of disbelief about him sitting there for hours studying her and the anchor, downplaying its significance as if it's just a wound. It's meant to be a bit sardonic, especially since it's a number 2 option in the dialogue wheel, and those tend to be a little less serious, more sarcastic, humorous, etc. Of course his response is equal to that, because, as you'll likely see and hear from the back and forth, Solas matches Inky's energy in the discussion. If she's playful, he's playful. If she's sincere, he's sincere. If she's standoffish, so is he. He mirrors the person he's talking to and matches the energy they bring to the table. So Solas responds to her with, longer than you might think. And that's him telling her, it was this crazy, impossible thing, and still I studied it longer than you'd think. But also given what he said in the alternative dialogue before, you were a mystery, you still are. There's an extra hint to this that he's still studying it, and he's not letting on that that's what's happening with this choice. But I want to draw attention to the difference then in these two circumstances. Before, he sat beside her while she was unconscious and he could do whatever the hell he wanted with her, without protest. And then she woke up, and now he's forced to observe from afar. She's now aware and autonomous. He can't poke and prod at this mystery anymore, and he's got to be wary of what questions he asks, and what answers he words his way out of her, for the sake of forwarding his plans and appeasing the Inquisition, especially Liliana and Cassandra. He could probably continue to poke and prod, but he doesn't. She's still a mystery, but he stays away from her. She's always the one to approach him, With the exceptions of that part, the dawn will come, and that's because he needed to act in that moment. But Solas is being sneaky and deceptive and avoiding this direct confrontation. Well, not confrontation, but he's halfway between respecting of her personal space and outright avoiding her. As if he's afraid of directly dealing with the consequence of his actions, and maybe just dealing with people in general, because he's a broody, complicated lad.
I wanted to know more about you.
This is about me.
Solas disapproves of this response, and it's pretty understandable why. This is a weird statement from Inky, and it speaks to a level of ignorance on her part. He's just after saying, I did this thing when I first met you, and of course, it's about him. He hasn't really said anything about anyone else. Also, there's a level of self-importance to that statement, since the prompting for the dialogue says, we're not here for me, when, as I said, Solas made it clear he was talking about himself. And I get it, from Inky's perspective, this event very much has her at the heart of it. But the fact that she uses this pause in the conversation to essentially rush into the point of the conversation is just very anti-Solas. Anti-drawing out the conversation into a full-on discussion, which is why he disapproves of it. Additionally, for his character, he led her to Haven and into this prison. He's using their connection as a way of explaining himself in a way that Inky might understand him better, understand his regrets better, which ties into Veilguard a bit more literally. This is especially relevant because the anchor is connected to the Fade, to the Veil, to the Breach, all things of great significance to him as the Dread Wolf. They have this connection and he's doing his best to lessen that distance between them in a semi-tangible way through their shared experiences of tragedy, of regret, of isolation, of being imprisoned in some way, which at the start of the game is what she was experiencing literally. It's his weird way of showing empathy because he's just a very weird guy and I think he has a very hard time of being direct about his issues, especially when he's actively lying to you at this point in his character development. So when Solas responds with, "This is about me," he's insisting she actually listen to him. She's just asked for plain answers and he's kind of digging at his soul right now to explain himself in a way that is safe but genuine. He's frustrated and he's still reminding her calmly that this is sharing part of himself right now. Not just the actual words he's saying or the act of dreaming together, as she'll soon realise, but this whole drawn out process is him. It's not easy for him to trust people. He is... She's been getting her answers this whole time, whether or not it's told to her verbally, which works in real life, apparently.
The next time you have to mourn, you don't need to be alone.
It's been so long since I could trust someone.
I know.
I ran every test I could imagine. Searched the Fade, yet found nothing. Cassandra suspected duplicity. She threatened to have me executed as an apostate if I didn't produce results.
This is the part where Solas starts digging deeper into who he is, fundamentally, and who he was particularly at the start of the game. He's explaining the difficulty of the situation he was in, preluding what he'll reveal in just a moment. He did everything in his power to solve this problem. He searched the Fade and found nothing. Solas, fen'harel, this former spirit and ancient being came up with nothing, and he could turn to no one in that process. He was completely alone, hence the connection between them. And on top of all that, he was being directly threatened with death if he continued to come up with nothing. He's expressing empathy, he's trying to explain this connection between them without actually saying it.
I would never have agreed to that.
You were in no position to argue.
While Inquisitor is trying to reassure Solas here, he reminds her that she was unconscious at the time of this conflict. He's telling her, I was alone, no allies, nobody to back me up, and the situation was dire.
Cassandra's like that with everyone.
Yes.
Solas approves of this. I think mainly because there's an implication that Inky knows Solas was in a difficult situation, and she's reassuring him here, not just with humour, but by telling him, yeah, it wasn't just you. You weren't in any... Damn. You weren't in any real danger. And he laughs, because of course he wasn't. He's fen'harel, and Inky is accepting this offer of connection. She's listening to him and returning his words with reassurance and a hint of camaraderie. And he's giving it back in turn with a laugh. It seems so obvious and simple, but it's something that I think gets forgotten a lot in writing.
The threat worked.
No, it didn't.
Solas disapproves of this answer, mainly because Inquisitor is making the assumption that he got results, when he's already admitted that he didn't. It just means that she wasn't paying attention. This leads into Solas's big explanation, the reason why this is the story he's telling, and why they're back in Haven.
You were never going to wake up? How could you? A mortal sent physically through the Fade. I was frustrated, frightened. The spirits I might have consulted had been driven away by the breach. Although I wished to help, I had no faith in Cassandra, or she in me. I was ready to flee.
He'd settled on the conclusion that she was never going to wake up. She was doomed, and he was absolutely going to leave her to her fate. Either the mark and/or the breach would kill her, or she'd be murdered, as the notes imply was already attempted. His word choice in the monologue is interesting too. He calls her a mortal, someone small and insignificant in the world. How could there be any hope for someone like that? It speaks a lot to his character that he gives up relatively quickly. It's somewhat reasonable, given what happened to Inquisitor is damn near impossible without some great cost, although many died at the Conclave, so you could argue they paid the price for Inquisitor's survival. Not that that was the exchange, but you know. He says that he was frustrated and frightened, and most importantly, alone. He couldn't speak to spirits, his only friends.
I thought you didn't have any friends besides spirits.
I don't.
And everyone else was either incompetent, untrustworthy, or a threat, or outright ignorant of what the hell was going on. He was the only person who could understand what the situation actually was, and the context of it. He was in a panic, and he was desperate, and he couldn't tell anyone about it, not in a meaningful way. He admits to Inquisitor that he was going to flee, that without her, he felt hopeless. Keep this in mind.
But you stayed.
I did.
If you'd run, Cassandra would have been certain of your guilt. She'd have hunted you down.
You are likely right.
These two responses from Inquisitor gain a very simple response from Solas, and it's just his confirmation. He's just saying, "Yup," with a thumbs up, basically. It's less interesting than the questioning response, but it's also just very Solas to answer something like, "Oh, here's my statement." Okay, cool. So the next one.
The breach threatened the whole world. Where did you plan to go?
Someplace far away, where I might research a way to repair the breach before its effects reached me. I never said it was a good plan.
Solas approves. It's a good question. He says, someplace far away, which honestly could be anywhere, but bet he'd end up going to the lighthouse to avoid the disaster, as well as have access to a host of places and be able to communicate with spirits in the Fade properly. He'd retreat to his comfort zone. It's just such an open response with no actual endpoint or solid plan that it might as well have been a shrug. He also says, "I never said it was a good plan," as he does this side glance. It's funny, but it's also kind of sad because it's Solas, and he was just out of options in that moment. The guy was just lost, dealing with the ultimate consequence of his actions with no realistic way out, once and for all. Of course, Inquisitor did show up and relieve him of that burden.
I told myself, one more attempt to seal the rifts. I tried and failed. No ordinary magic would affect them. I watched the rifts expand and grow, resigned myself to flee, and then... It seems you hold the key to our salvation. You had sealed it with a gesture. And right then, I felt the whole world change.
He regards the memory of the breach, approaching it with ease and confidence now that he has the Inquisitor there, now that it's no longer a threat to him. He tells her that while he was ready to flee, he was giving it one last chance, and the significance of that to a character like him, to give hope one last chance and for it to pay off. That's so important for his development, that is what the Inquisitor symbolises to him above all else. Hope. To defy the odds, to go to the brink and rise again, to come back from such an incurable state, a state that, as we established earlier, implies being this lesser being, a mortal with a physical form who could enter the Fade and survive, who could be poked and prodded and studied, and return with such power and autonomy, and recapture the respect of those who once reviled her and wanted her dead. That is what the Inquisitor was to Solas, and knowing his full story now after Veilguard, their relationship, whether it was romantic or platonic, or even they hated each other, was incredible in what it meant to him, and by extension the player in retrospect. She holds the key to salvation. With nothing more than a gesture, she fixed this unsolvable challenge for him, his possible downfall. In that moment he felt the whole world change, because it meant he was wrong. And it meant there was hope for him still when he was sure there was none. She holds the key to their salvation. And his memory of the event is of him holding her hand as she makes that gesture. They're connected. He is with her in this. Her salvation is his. But it's different to how it actually happened, because her perspective is that he grabbed her in a panic, while he is remembering only the holding.
Quickly! Before more come through!
What did you do?
I did nothing. The credit is yours.
You mean this?
Whatever magic opened the breach in the sky also placed that mark upon your hand. I theorized the mark might be able to close the rifts that have opened in the breach's wake. And it seems I was correct.
Meaning it could also close the breach itself?
Possibly. It seems you hold the key to our salvation. I watched the rifts expand and grow, resigned myself to flee, and then... It seems you hold the key to our salvation.
He's not finished that process of accepting equality to their relationship. He envisions the end goal, not the rough and uncomfortable process to get there. Also, I love that the rift in his memory looks like the Inquisition symbol a little bit. Just thought I'd put that there. I love all of the responses Inquisitor can give to this, not just the romance one, but we'll get to the kiss after the others, save the best for last and all that.
It was that impressive to see me awake.
You had walked in the Fade. I have explored the Fade more than anyone alive, but even I can only visit in dreams. But you might have been able to visit me here while awake.
What do you mean?
Where do you think we were?
When the Inquisitor reacts with surprise, Solas matches that with a baffled tone, as if everything he's said up to this point hasn't been made clear that, yes, her waking up was a big deal. Him saying even he can only visit the Fade in dreams feels halfway him stroking his own ego, but in fairness, he's a powerful dreamer and a former spirit. The former is hinted at in the moment, like, me, the guy obsessed with the Fade who conjured this dream and controls it seamlessly, can only do this. You were there in person. I also adore that he suggests that she could have visited him while she was awake, because imagine his reaction to that. Firstly, you can imagine his utter confusion if that had happened, and secondly, and more seriously, I do think that might have made Solas feel better, because she'd be awake and physical while he'd be dreaming and intangible. I think that'd make him feel more spirit than physical person, like he wishes he was, and that's really sad and sweet to me.
You didn't say it that way, I don't think. You just said it.
Is that how you remember it? That is what I mean about perception shaping our existence.
But that's only true in the Fade.
Where do you think we were?
Inquisitor is catching on with this one. Like, she knows something's not quite right, and Solas just plays along as if the answer is obvious. Although, with the lines that conclude this scene, he isn't entirely aware that she doesn't know it's a dream. He's just, once again, going, yeah, that's how this works. I adore this because this is Solas in his element. He's explaining, and again, it's kind of sweet that his default state of thinking of the Fade is that it's his home. He's explaining that his existence is intrinsically tied to the Fade and it's shaped by how he perceives it. Not just as the one who created the Veil, but as a spirit of wisdom. And he's happily just helping her come to this conclusion about different perspectives. He's happy that she's noticing it. Not just the differences, but the subtext comes across as him implying there's not a disconnect between them as ancient elf and modern elf, as a former spirit who manifested his form, and person born via physical conception. He says, our. It's another subtle attempt of him building up that connection, reaching out to add to this growing relationship, which at this point has been established to be a positive one if this scene triggers.
For all our sakes, I'm pleased that you stuck around.
As am I. You have fractured rules of man and nature, and you will shatter more before you are done. To visit me here, and you not even a mage.
What do you mean?
Where do you think we were?
With this one, Inquisitor is a bit more formal, but still appreciative, and Solas answers with not necessarily a compliment, but definitely giving her credit for her indomitable nature. She could take on the world. She might not win, but she'd make an impact. She'd surprise them all. The use of the words fracture and shatter suggests she's a destructive force. And to be fair, all of the companions point out how much Inquisitor is a destructive force. It's a bit of a warning, but it's also a certainty to him. You will shatter more before you're done. Perhaps that's a hint about his plans to tear down the Veil. Maybe he's referring to Corypheus. But he says more after the rules of man and nature, and that feels like he means something spiritual. Given that this takes place in the Fade, and a lot of it's been at least Fade adjacent in terms of topics they've discussed. Also, he's saying you shouldn't have been able to do this to both a mage Inque and a non-mage Inque. With what he just said before about shattering rules, he's doubling down on how much she surprises him, how much about her makes no sense to him. And that goes on for the balcony scene later in the game, where he finally comes out and asks, okay, what the hell is going on with you? Why are you not normal? More about that scene another day though. This is a scene where he allows himself to trust someone just a little bit for the first time in a very long time, because the player got his approval up and he wants to believe in her because she's already defied so much. So why not defy his expectation of being her again? Which leads us to the romance options that add that extra layer onto his conflict and development. Now, before we get into that, just want to say that all of those are options until now do not include flirting or romance, so we can interpret all of that to be platonic, especially the last couple of things regarding felt the whole world change. Solo villain flirting can happen in the game up until this point on, I think, 3 occasions. First is at Haven, where Llewellyn flirts by reassuring him that she'll do whatever it takes to protect him.
It will be interesting to watch this fledgling Inquisition make its way. I will stay to see it, for now.
Was that in doubt?
I am an apostate surrounded by Chantry forces in the middle of a mage rebellion. Cassandra has been accommodating, but you understand my caution.
You came here to help, Solas. I won't let them use that against you.
How would you stop them?
However I had to.
Thank you.
The second is the class-unique flirts.
You strengthen your body to deliver and withstand punishment. The muscles are an enjoyable side benefit. You have chosen a path whose steps you do not dislike because it leads to a destination you enjoy. As have I.
You find the muscles enjoyable?
I meant that you enjoyed having them, presumably.
Ah.
But yes, since you asked. You train to flick a dagger or an arrow to its target. The grace with which you move is a pleasing side benefit.
So you're suggesting I'm graceful?
No. I am declaring it. It was not a subject for debate. You train your will to control magic and withstand possession. Your indomitable focus is an enjoyable side benefit.
Indomitable focus?
Presumably. I have yet to see it dominated. I imagine that the sight would be fascinating.
And the third is this cute little wanting to help him make new friends moment.
The Fade reflects the minds of the living. If you expect a spirit of wisdom to be a pride demon, it will adapt. And if your mind is free of corrupting influences, if you understand the nature of the spirit, they can be fast friends.
I'm impressed that you could become friends with spirits.
Anyone who can dream has the potential. Few ever try. My friends comforted me in grief and shared my joy. Yet, because they exist without form, as we understand it, that Chantry declares that spirits are not truly people. Is Cassandra defined by her cheekbones and not her faith? Varric by his chest hair and not his wit?
You have an interesting way of looking at the world, Solas.
I try. And that isn't quite an answer.
I look forward to helping you make new friends.
That should be... well...
That isn't quite an answer either.
The first one ties into the idea that Solas is ultimately looking for someone he can trust and rely on, someone willing to sacrifice for him. Not necessarily the act of sacrifice itself, but the willingness of volunteering that sacrifice, or act of care and devotion. He wants to feel safe and cared for without condition. That is love to him, because that's what he's been denied by almost everyone, except for Philisan. Philisan did nothing wrong. And the class-related flirts, interestingly, are an option if you ask Solas about himself, which prompts this scene. So they're related to him, which makes sense, but it's fun that it's related to this scene, although he will compliment every Inquisitor with. Inque has to prompt the flirt out of him by asking for clarification on the compliments that it is flirting, but only a Lavellan can do this, and therefore Solas only flirts with a Lavellan. It feels purposeful, but it also feels like he's indulging her a little because she's fishing for it a little bit. So I don't quite know what to make of it, because this comes before the Return to Haven dream scene, where he's finally starting to see her as a person. It's kind of messy. So either he's just like, yeah, I still got it. He's manipulating her because he's aware she wants to be flirted with, or he's just enjoying the harmless flirting because he's charming as hell. Maybe all at once. Like I said, it's weird because of where Solas is at mentally at this point regarding the people of Thedas, but I'm not gonna lie, I do still blush at these flirts, they're really good. And then there's the friendship related flirt, which is coy and sweet, and it feels very much like a tug and pull kind of flirt. And I don't know how better to describe it, but it's a flirt that stems from Solas talking about spirits being people, that he's friends with spirits, and she doesn't quite answer him asking, are people only people of their flesh and blood? She only suggests the idea of him making more, but in this, yeah, me, I'm interested, kind of way. Solas, the former spirit, is talking about spirits being people and asking if she thinks people are defined by their former nature, and her response is,
You have an interesting way of looking at the world, Solas.
And even now that catches me off guard with how out of nowhere it comes across as, but in a good way. Bottom line, she's throwing him off guard with this idea that she's interested in helping him, but it's flirty and cute. With that in mind, Lavellan can say the following during the dream scene.
Felt the whole world change.
A figure of speech.
I'm aware of the metaphor. I'm more interested in felt.
You change everything.
Lavellan expresses a generous interpretation of what he's said, and to me, I think what he said could be taken either way. But it wasn't necessarily flirty or some declaration of affection. Solas felt the whole world change in terms of being proven wrong, to have this glimmer of unexpected hope, the things I've mentioned before now. And Llewellyn interprets it as something stronger than that. Once again, she's the one prompting the flirt and shifting something platonic, he said, into the realm of flirtation. And presuming the players picked at least one of the previous flirts before this point, flirts you would have at least come across to get to this scene, there's also been this light spark of interest between them. He's somewhat hesitant to initiate, but he certainly reciprocates if she instigates. And now is the first time he's been the one reaching out for a connection. He still has this hesitation as he clarifies the figure of speech, but she persists. She's more interested in felt.
Spirit does not work through emotions, it embodies them. This is not some fanciful story, child of the stone. We cannot change our nature by wishing.
You don't think?
She's telling him she's interested when she says, I'm more interested in felt. She wants to see more of his emotional responses, not just the advisor he acts as or useful companion/ally. She's saying she cares for him. When he says she changes everything, of course he's referring to his viewpoint on the modern world and his plans. But with everything I've said before this point, she's changing everything. Changing, not changed. She's rewriting the narrative as she goes. She's in the process of it. She puts her mind to it and things get done. And that means the world to him. He's hopeful and optimistic, and now with her open desire to be closer with him, to see him and think, I like you enough to go to the point of romance with everything I know of you. After he's just shared that he can be callous, that he's willing to flee, that he's a pessimist who would have abandoned her, the Inquisition, the world, she still says that she wants to be with him after all of that. Imagine what that felt like for him. She even changes the meaning of his words, but in a way that, with all the context of the previous flirts, makes him feel safe, like someone's come along and offered him a glimpse of the right path. This prospect of salvation to change the negative pattern he's gotten himself into over his life. She changes everything, and everything is a lot, and coming from Solas, it means a lot. She's rewrote his narrative in a way, his perspective of everything. That's powerful, and he's telling her that she has that power over him, over whatever she wants to have power over. He's making himself even more vulnerable in the subtext, because he's all giddy with love, at the possibility of being loved and understood, even if he's not fully conscious of it at this point. He hasn't completed his development loop at this point to understand it as falling in love, was what I meant. And he allows her to make that next move again. She's the one who comes closer and controls how this goes forward. She makes the choice between going in for a kiss and letting him down gently. I do like how much their romance is so heavy in this idea of consent. Like, they both clearly want to have that run off into the sunset together moment, but are constantly dancing around it and waiting on the other to affirm that they actually want to continue and move on. It's nice. It's the exact romance that I guess I've been craving my entire life. Now, I don't know which of you psychopaths pick don't kiss and stick with it after the flirting, but that choice exists. He waits for her to make the next move, and it goes like this.
You're a good friend, Solas. I appreciate that.
Thank you. You throw me off so easily. Even here.
What do you mean, even here?
I know this is super sweet, but I can't help but remember there's an exchange at the start of Solas' personal quest that makes this just a little bit weird.
I thought you didn't have any friends besides spirits.
I don't.
Inquisitor calls him a good friend, and yet, later in the game, not much later, but still later, Solas Inquisitor confirmed the Inquisitor isn't his friend, because he doesn't have friends besides spirits. So this line from Inky in the dream scene is her telling him that he is her friend, but not necessarily that he sees her as his yet. It's why he says thank you in response, because she's been sweet to him, shows interest in him, and she's letting him down gently and allowing him to not overthink the flirting. Unbeknownst to her, it's a relief to him because it allows him to avoid debating the moral dilemma of beginning to fall in love with a mortal elf he didn't really see as a person, or let alone a friend at this point. There's a very clear power difference between them, and she's not aware of it yet, perhaps even thinking she, as Inquisitor and him, a mere apostate, has power over him. There's a lot of feelings wrapped up in this dynamic for both of them, and it's enough to make at least Solas go, I'm not going to be the one initiating anything. He also admits that she throws him off easily, and there's something really endearing about that, knowing who he is. Especially since he's openly admitting to her that she does this to him. That he, someone who's so composed and sure, is thrown off by her with so little effort. Like it's something inherent about her. It comes across as very soulmates-y. And then it ends similarly to all the non-flirt endings where he says, even here. And she catches on to, what do you mean even here? Letting him know that she indeed was not aware they were dreaming. And every ending he smiles at this, like, oh, whoops, tee-hee. In all the endings for this scene. Solas is happy. He feels comforted by the idea that he opened up to someone and it didn't end in a disaster. He didn't lose control, nothing blew up, nobody hurt him. And most of all, he's still him. Solas, the dreamer, the one with power in this place. And he goes on to explain that a bit more in the aftermath, but we'll get to that after we go over the kiss option.
Sweet talker.
We shouldn't. It isn't right. Not even here.
What do you mean, even here?
Where do you think we were?
Inquisitor looks away almost bashfully as she calls him out on his honeyed words, like he didn't know how sweet he was or the effect he had on her. At first, it seems like that's the end of it, her calling out his flirtation and interest in her, as if this is another almost something that never leads to anything. He looks away as well, first down, then across the distance with this 100-yard stare. He's thinking about it, I feel, not just her, and this possibility of love and happiness. Hell, even a fling. But he can't because he's restrained by duty and his traumatic past, and every difference between them he sees. But he still clearly wants it. You can't see it without flycam, sadly, but he's got his hands on his hips, there's confidence in his stance, his very wide stance, and his expression doesn't quite match that. There's something very off about it. She throws him off so easily, even here. She gives the slightest little headshake before looking up at his thoughtful expression, and reaches out almost impulsively, touching his neck, and moving his head to face her again, gently nudging his jaw. And it looks almost like it was the sudden touch that made him look back at her, rather than her hand turning his head. When she kisses him, he doesn't react at first, barely turning his head to match hers, hands still on his hips. It's a quick, impulsive kiss after all. But when she pulls away, ready to flee, kind of like he was ready to flee all that time ago, as he explained, his eyes are locked on her, and he grabs her back with a smile on his face, very intently, like he never intends to let go, as his hands reach for her waist and he bends her back. It's not just a kiss. This is him mirroring her, but with his own intensity. His own, you've changed everything, I'm not fleeing anymore, I'm tackling this head on because you make me feel like I can. He's always so reserved, and this is him snapping, showing how he really feels. He wants to kiss her, he wants to be happy, he wants to fall in love and move on from godhood and the veil and Mythal and the blight. He completely invades her space with this overwhelming need to express how much he loves affection. He practically tries to envelop her, and on screen he literally almost removes her from the picture. She's behind him, hidden more and more, and he's center frame, taking up all of this space. His presence in this moment of them both being intimate together is overpowering her. While he gives way for her to take the initiative, once he's given the green light, he goes for it. And part of him must know it's overwhelming because he tries to pull back before going in for another kiss. He doesn't want to let go, but he still keeps going in for that kiss. And she's stunned by it. She practically pauses like, oh shit, that just happened, with her hands still hovering where his head was. He shakes his head, mirroring her hesitation, and there's this one last kiss before he pulls away.
This isn't real.
That's a matter of debate. Probably best discussed after you wake up.
It's interesting that Solas says they shouldn't, because... Cat, my sweet baby, stop. It's interesting that Solas says they shouldn't because it's not right, even here, as in the Fade. Even here implies that this is the one place where it would be right. And I suppose you might interpret that as this is the realm of possibility, or dreaming and exploring one's subconscious, but I feel drawn to this line because it's Solas saying it. It carries an extra layer of meaning because of who and what he is, and his familiarity with the place. He could also be referring to the memory of Haven, and the fact that dozens, if not hundreds of people died here. Therefore, there's likely a bunch of spirits hovering around out of sight and just watching them smooch. I'm really not sure what I feel conclusively, but I think there's something in that line that makes me want to study it more. I'm really not sure what I feel conclusively, but there's something in that line that makes me want to study it more, but I'm coming up blank. I'd love to hear what your guys' thoughts on it are. Then of course Solas leads into the revelation of this is a dream, which honestly sparks up a bunch of questions I feel should be natural for Inquisitor to ask, like, are you a spirit mimicking my friend? Are you real in any way, or has my mind made up a Solas because I wanted to chat with him? Those sorts of things. And they kind of go into that after, but this is, for romancers and non-romancers, the scene where the player and or Inky works out that Solas is a dreamer, because he gets the Inquisitor to wake up on command. And the implications of that for the Inquisitor are insane. As I believe I mentioned before, only dreamers have conscious control over the Fade, and the ability to find other dreamers without blood magic or an unhealthy amount of lyrium involved. Solas is likely giddy at the prospect of having someone surprise him like this, and I'll do a video on it later at some point, but the balcony scene where he asks, "What were you like before the anchor?" adds to this idea for him that he sees something of himself in Inquisitor. Literally or metaphorically. She has his magic, she has some of his power, and that's the beginning of this foundation of connection to the modern world for him. It's far more dark and tragic if you have low approval with him, but the high approval, therefore gaining this scene and all the other positive high approval scenes, it just means a lot to him. And it actively shows that he's a character that longs for the unexpected connection as much as dreads it. It's really well written and animated, and I think about it a lot. Also, he tells her, this is better discussed after you wake up, and that just backs up what I'm saying here. He wants to continue talking about it, but in a place where they're more likely to keep their hands off each other. Back to reality, where she is the Inquisitor and he is just the apostate. And last thing, the part where he says, wake up. Solas does actually have a different animation on his facial expression. With the non-kiss, he has a more neutral expression, and for the kiss his eyes are squinting, head tilting a little, and he's got a very subtle little smile. She wakes up in a bolt, like someone who just remembered they forgot to put the pasta in the fridge for the 15th time, and looks down with this thoughtful frown, probably wondering whether or not that was just a dream, as well as thinking with a pounding heart, I found him in the Fade and he woke me up just by telling me to. It's a nice little touch to the scene, romance or no. I like to see my protagonists startled and not in a place of absolute control. It gives them this air of realism. They're the hero, sure, but they're still a person. That's just something that goes a long way with any kind of character, even in scenes with no dialogue, if we're counting the part where she wakes up as its own little scene. Also, this mirrors what Solas said earlier about being thrown off so easily. She gets startled awake, thrown off from the illusion of walking through Skyhold, then Haven, having this nice little conversation only to be ejected out of a dream. It's funny and a little poetic. They throw each other off, which is why their stories intertwine so well, especially with the romance.
Sleep well?
The audacity of this man to greet the Inquisitor with, sleep well, after all of that, He's definitely just being coy, but he's cute about it, so he gets a pass. There is a significant difference between the kiss and the non-kiss options after the previous scene, so we'll go over the non-kiss dialogue options, then the kiss ones.
I've never done anything like that before. Do you regularly talk to people in dreams?
No. Consider that one more rule you have effortlessly broken in your rise to power. I had no idea that the anchor would allow you to dream with such focus. It is truly remarkable, but I am reasonably certain we are awake now. And if you wish to discuss anything, I would enjoy talking.
Option 1 is a peaceful, positive response to what happened. Inquisitor politely tells him she's never done that before, specifically having a dread playdate with someone else, and asks if it's something he's experienced in. So Solas states outright that he doesn't have a habit of speaking with people in the Fade, despite this being one of the unique abilities of Dreamer mages, something that otherwise would require multiple mages, a quantitative fuckload of lyrium, and or blood magic. What this tells us is Solas is not a people person at all, which I'm sure doesn't come as a surprise to anyone, but it's just interesting that he's set and equipped to be capable of more communication, but he chooses not to. If we consider other dialogue, it kind of makes sense.
Have you always travelled and studied alone?
Not at all. I have built many lasting friendships. Spirits of wisdom, possessed of ancient knowledge, happy to share what they had seen. Spirits of purpose helped me search. Even wisps, curious and playful, would point out treasures I might have missed.
I don't know of any spirits by those names.
They rarely seek this world. When they do, their natures do not often survive exposure to the people they encounter. Wisdom and purpose are too easily twisted to pride and desire.
You're saying that you became friends with pride and desire demons?
They were not demons for me.
Meaning?
The Fade reflects the minds of the living. If you expect a spirit of wisdom to be a pride demon, it will adapt. And if your mind is free of corrupting influences, if you understand the nature of the spirit, they can be fast friends.
You trust these spirits not to possess you the first time you accidentally make a wish?
Do you trust your friends not to turn on you?
Well, yes, but they're people.
Ah, of course.
You know what I mean.
Are people only people because they are flesh and blood? Is Cassandra defined by her cheekbones and not her faith? Varric by his chest hair and not his wit?
I hadn't thought about it that way, but I see your point.
Thank you. Few are willing to entertain such a notion.
Solas, through his experiences with other people, shies from conflict with other people as much as possible, and because of his trauma with things like Mythal pressuring him into doing things that he did not want to do.
You have so long observed the world. Why not consider joining it?
But I have no desire to live as humans. I have the Fade. Besides, this talk of taking on a solid form. I think you underestimate the danger. When you took the glowing stone to build your body, did the earth not shake?
The lyrium gives us the strength we had when we were of the Fade. We are the best of physical and spirit. I need your wisdom, Solas. To withstand the louder voices who would go too far like Elganon. I need you.
This is madness. You must know that. I will always follow where you go.
Have you created what we need?
With this, the proper ritual will sunder every titan from its spirit. But you must know those severed dreams will certainly be driven mad. A disembodied blight of pain and anger. It is awful what we're doing.
And the only way to end this war.
Elganon going back on his word and becoming his lifelong enemy.
You cannot do this, Elganon! You swore that we would give up our commands when this horrific war was over.
Our people need our leadership. If you're unwilling, leave.
Our people must rebuild, and we must help unite them.
So, we did not fight for freedom, but to conquer this land and our own.
We fought to win, and now the Evenuris are as gods. I do not answer to Mythal's annoying lapdog.
The people are afraid. They must believe in something.
They need strength.
And wisdom.
They need gods who can protect them.
We are not gods. You will learn that.
Every lapdog hides a wolf inside.
And Rule attempting SA. Gillinan, the most sensitive of them, experimenting with people in the Blight and joining the Evanuris against his wishes.
You would unleash a blight on this world and call it a masterwork! You, who are the most sensitive of us!
All that I am belongs to the pursuit of creation. You chose to constrain yourself. I must climb to the heights only understood by gods. I go now to join them.
Even though it's clear that there was some level of connection between them, although we don't know the extent of that relationship. And then there's his perception of Felisan telling him no after all this time in the Masked Empire. And of course, the post-Veil world where he was reviled and attacked by the Dalish, who are essentially the remnants of his people, of what he became. And he's just bombarded with reminders that he is remembered solely for his worst actions, and then himself, and everything he chose to do. It wasn't exactly like all these things were forced on him, he did still choose them. Solas is someone who just does not do well with others, because he's a bit of a pompous ass, but also because repeatedly he's put in situations and relationships that worked out terribly for him. All that this man really knows is hurt, and his only comfort from that is spending time with spirits, because spirits kind of make a bit more sense. They're a bit more linear in their objectives and their motivations. You can 9 times out of 10 tell what a spirit wants to do, whether or not it's going to hurt you, so long as you're smart. And Solas is smart, if that makes sense. Solas is, I suspect, trying as best he can to return to a simpler time of when he himself was a spirit, as if none of the aforementioned things happened, which is perfectly reasonable given how bad it got for him. Like, his entire life was a mess. After this, Solas brings up the fact that she shouldn't have been able to meet with him in dreams. She's not a dreamer maid. She might even be a dwarf, incapable of magic, incapable of dreaming. He's hypothesizing that it's the anchor, the mark from his power, that's giving them this connection, and at least giving Inquisitor an uncanny connection to the Fade and magic itself. I do think that it's connected to him specifically, because she doesn't do it with anyone else. The last part of his default finishing line for all of this dialogue, leading into either a goodbye or a talking with him about something else. There's something playful about it. I am reasonably certain that we are awake now, as if there is any kind of room for doubt in that. It's also an assurance to the Inquisitor that they are actually awake, since she wasn't aware before and is probably worried that it's still a dream, that it's not real. It's cute, and it's Solas being open, informative, and treating Inquisitor like a friend, especially since he finishes by saying, "If you have anything to discuss, I'd enjoy talking." He's saying, despite not being a people person, and with the meta-knowledge of his problematic relationships in the past and his learned distrust of people, he wants to keep talking, to keep interacting with you. It's a huge step for his character.
When I asked to talk to you, I didn't think we'd be doing it in the Fade. Still, better than the dream where I'm standing naked in front of the war table.
Since you went to the trouble of finding me in your sleep, it was worth the effort of doing something interesting. I had no idea that the anchor would allow you to dream with such focus. It is truly remarkable, but I am reasonably certain we are awake now.
This dialogue instigates a more playful tone to the conversation, with the Inquisitor once again reacting positively to the experience of dreaming with Solas. Solas's response is light, but not quite humorous, though it does imply a couple of things. Firstly, that not only does the player learn that it was the Inquisitor who found him in dreams. Yes, good boy. I know you want it. Okay, 2 kicks. Run free! Firstly, that not only does the player learn that it was the Inquisitor who found him in dreams, which, as I mentioned before, is a big deal, but is letting the Inquisitor know even just through subtext, that this is a big deal. Secondly, he says it was worth the effort of doing something interesting, telling the player and Inquisitor that it was something willful on his part, that he put effort into reshaping the dream for the Inquisitor, because she was worth that effort. Plus there's this level of showing off on his part. He wanted to let the Inquisitor know that he could do this. He wanted to showcase his control after it was kind of snatched from him with the Inquisitor's little surprise visit.
I had some odd dreams. Very odd dreams. With very odd people in them, for that matter.
I will take that as a compliment, given that you include yourself. Remember, you came looking for me. I had no idea that the anchor would allow you to dream with such focus. It is truly remarkable.
The final friendship dialogue is probably the least friendly of them all. It's Inquisitor being a mix of coy and slightly negative about the experience, repeating the word odd to him. And I feel like the intent of this is for the Inquisitor to come across as very off-put by the experience. Especially about the revelation that Solas was a dreamer and could have that much control while dreaming. Especially if you contrast this with the romance version where she says, liked how it ended though, instead of with weird people in them. There's a bit of a difference in perspective. One is, whoa, that was weird, uncomfortable noises. And the other is, whoa, that was weird, flirty noises. By using people, Solas throws the weird statement back in the Inquisitor's face, but in a somewhat light-hearted way. You're weird too, just so you know. Adding to this is Solas doubling down on the fact that it was odd for him as well, because the Inquisitor shouldn't have naturally been able to track him down in dreams. They shouldn't have that kind of power. His power. Solas is, as I've said before, making a real connection with someone. He's making a friend in this scene, sharing a part of himself, and being met with an equal enthusiasm and capability, to a point. And it didn't go terribly. Nothing horrible happened, and he concludes all of the dialogue trees for the dream scene with, "Wake up," with a smile on his face. And this after talk with, "If you wish to discuss anything, I would enjoy talking." He's open, inviting, and happy. That's a big deal for Solas's character. He's typically either cunty or depressed. He comes across as a wolf that rarely wags its tail, and yet this scene he seems genuinely happy. In a calm environment with a healthy-ish relationship, and he gets to just be himself for once. And now the romance options, which are actually quite a bit different. Unlike the friendship route, the romance has an extra round of dialogue between them.
I've never done anything like that before, on a number of levels.
I apologize. The kiss was impulsive and ill-considered, and I should not have encouraged it.
Obviously, the one thing on Llewellyn's mind at this point is the kissing, because it honestly comes out of nowhere. Yes, there's been some flirting back and forth between them, but Solas has never been overt about having romantic interest. In fact, I bet he hadn't even really considered it until the kiss happened. He's a very private person after all. Well, the class-based flirts have happened, as a requirement for this dialogue to have happened by this point, because it ties into the personal questions dialogue tree you need to go down before the fade scene triggers. There's a big difference between words and actions, and Solas is just a very reserved person. He does a lot of talk, but not a lot of action. He very rarely acts without thinking. Llewellyn is admitting with the first option that she's at a loss, but in a very sweet way. It's a compliment to him as a powerful dreamer, to him opening up to her about himself and some of the truth, and of course, the kiss is plural. She's never had a romantic rendezvous with a dreamer, and she's likely never been so impulsive with her flirty emotions, which may have been influenced by the fact that it did happen in the Fade. As Solas goes on to say, the kiss was impulsive and ill-considered. She threw him off so easily, even in the Fade. As he said earlier, perception shapes reality in the Fade. What went on between them was a manifestation of what they wanted, urged on by the fact that things happen a little easier in the Fade. In fact, Solas goes on to finalise the conversation with it by saying,
"It has been a long time, and things have always been easier for me in the Fade."
It was this willful and sweet thing that happened, and it could be true that neither of them were consciously aware of just how much they were interested in one another until this shared dream, and you have to admit there's something quite enchanting about that. Like fate, but softer and less demanding.
When I asked to talk to you, I didn't think we'd be doing it in the Fade. Or, for that matter, doing it in the Fade.
I apologize. The kiss was impulsive and ill-considered.
As you can see, Solas's responses are all the same, and it's Llewellyn who gets to choose how this conversation goes, as she's the one who has the final say in how they move forward. We'll get to that part in a bit. I do like that he has a little chuckle at all her reactions to what's happening, because it says something about Solas that puts him in a positive light. Like, he can see how embarrassing and ridiculous the situation is, and he's someone that doesn't really laugh all that much. Not sincerely. This was a positive experience for him, for both of them. He likes someone, she likes him, and that's all it had to be. And he's not unhappy with it, despite that he goes on to be very hesitant about it becoming something more than a happy little surprise in a dream. It just humanises him a good bit. It makes him less of this figure of legend, this antagonist, the bringer of nightmares and whatnot. It makes him just a man falling in love, and we get to see that happen and experience it through our Llewellyns. As for Llewellyn, here she takes a playful approach with a sexual twist to it. She's saying, doing it in the Fade, to make light of the fact that she gave him an impulsive peck, a touch on the cheek, and he just goes for it with full body contact, bending her backwards, making out. It's just really funny in retrospect, and Llewellyn here is just pointing that out, like, was not expecting that.
I had some odd dreams. Very odd dreams. Liked how it ended, though.
I apologize. The kiss was impulsive and ill-considered, and I should not have encouraged it.
This is quite differently toned to the non-romance version, as Inquisitor before implied that this was a negative experience, to a degree. While here she's saying, yeah no, please surprise me, new kink unlocked, kind of energy. I've not much to say other than that, because Solas's response is the same as any other reaction Llewellyn has. He's halfway amused and halfway embarrassed, with a sprinkling of general happiness. Which brings us to the next part of the conversation, which is Llewellyn's response to his, I'm sorry, that was bad, I shouldn't have done it, in which both of them have unique things to say.
You did kiss me back. If I'm pressuring you...
No, you're not. I am perhaps pressuring myself. It has been a long time, and things have always been easier for me in the Fade. I am not certain this is the best idea. It could lead to trouble.
Llewellyn makes it clear her confusion and worry about what happened. She did kiss him out of nowhere, and he kissed her back. And she has to tell him that because it sounds like he regrets it, that he didn't actually want it. As she then says, if I'm pressuring you. While he does take on this mentor-type role for her, she is still the Herald of Andraste, the Inquisitor, his superior, his boss. And this line is her recognising that, and that she's worried he thought he didn't have a choice. Which is of course icky to think about, especially given Solas's relationship with consent. The things he's done at Mythal's urging, even if she didn't have to urge that much, she had power over him. That's the clearest example I can come up with. You know what, actually I might do a video on that one day, because it's just a very heavy topic and it wouldn't fit in the footnote of this video, but I do want to go over the messy relationship between Solas and Mythal, because that is worth talking about. But not here. My point being is that Llewellyn makes it clear she's concerned for his well-being, for his knowing and full-hearted consent, and that's very important to this ship and the complications surrounding it. And Solas reassures her immediately and clearly that it's not a matter of him being pressured into doing anything by her. He's pressuring himself. He wants this, and the implication of that is that he should feel bad about it. He should feel shame and guilt over it. He's pressuring himself. Up to this point, he has tried to make himself important and irreplaceable to the Inquisitor, to the Inquisition. The Fade expert, the only one who can calm down this mark on her hand and give her all this insight. I'm not saying that he showed sexual or romantic interest in her purely to play this manipulation game, but I think he thinks he's doing that. He's mixing his guilt in with his genuine feelings, because he's spent so long playing the Dread Wolf, playing the part of the tragic villain forced to do terrible things because the ends justify the means. And at this point, I don't think he can separate that from healthy, positive relationships. For his perspective, he has never had that. He's never really had that with anyone who wasn't purely a spirit. Especially a relationship that is intimate, with who he is and all that he's done and still plans to do. It's part of his character flaw, a thing he needs to overcome or heal from. And a romance Llewellyn helps him on that journey. He's just not realised it quite yet.
You say that, but you're the one who started with tongue.
I did no such thing.
Oh, does it not count if it's only Fade tongue?
It has been a long time, and things have always been easier for me in the Fade. I am not certain this is the best idea. It could lead to trouble.
This one takes a far more playful direction, with Llewellyn confronting him head-on about what happened. He's trying to backtrack a little bit with his perspective and go, whoops, my bad, and she's chasing him and making sure he knows she's fully aware of the situation. She's not about to be gaslit by his word choice and downplaying what that was. It wasn't just a kiss, as he puts it. It was making out. It was him bending her backward and being passionate. It was him who started with passion. He exclaims his denial to her accusation, which is an outright lie. I can 100% see him blushing as he says this, and it's adorable. Keep in mind that internal conflict he has about the situation, and with this dialogue. She's still breaking down those walls of his insecurity. She's not done anything to him. He's not done anything to her. It's safe and fun and playful, and there's nothing for him to feel pressured about, by himself or otherwise. She's doubling down to, and teases him by asking if it doesn't count if it was in the Fade, because he kind of does try to downplay what happened, and she's just not having it, because she liked it. He liked it. And being interested in someone or being intimate isn't something to be ashamed of. She enjoyed it, and he enjoyed it, and she's wanting him to acknowledge that through a bit of teasing.
Solas, I thought you were interested. If I misread you, I apologize.
No. You have no need to apologize. It has been a long time.
It is a lot more serious than the other two, I feel, because it's Solas's regret reflecting in Llewellyn. He's made her feel as if she did something wrong here, and she feels bad about it. Which is tragic, of course, because it was not just her who acted. He played an active part in the intimacy. I think this really throws him off guard, because she apologises to him, and suddenly that guilt and shame that he's been feeling, and all his complicated feelings getting mixed up into the fact that he knows he made her feel like it's her fault. Like, she needs to apologise to him for what happened. It adds to the negativity a bit, bubbling away inside his head. But it's also an instance of someone taking a moment to acknowledge his feelings, for someone to have volunteered an apology to him because they prioritise his emotional well-being. And for Solas, that's very important, because nobody did that for him. At least as much as the Dragon Age series has presented to us, the audience. No one has ever done that for him. Except for Felasan, and then a high approval or romanced Inquisitor, and Rook, depending on your choices. He tells her she doesn't need to apologise, because of course she doesn't, and he starts a new sentence he doesn't finish. Solas rarely doesn't finish a sentence, and it's mostly with a romanced Llewellyn where he's at a loss for words. Who knows what the end of that sentence was going to be, but the important thing is that she made him stop and rethink what he was going to say to her. She made him hesitate, she made him think. Or maybe he just couldn't think of what to say, because he's lost, because of everything I've already talked about is going over and over in his head like a washing machine. Also because he does at this point start to realise he truly cares for her. She apologised and he tells her that she doesn't have to, because he realises that he cares. He cared enough to kiss her, and he cares enough to know that it means he still wants to. And then a choice has to be made. And honestly, I know what all of my fellow solo villains picked. So let's see what the continue romance option says first, and then we'll go on to the end relationship option.
It has been a long time, and things have always been easier for me in the Fade. I am not certain this is the best idea. It could lead to trouble.
I'm willing to take that chance, if you are.
Maybe, yes. If I could take a little time to think. There are considerations.
Take all the time you need.
Thank you. I am not often thrown by things that happen in dreams, but I am reasonably certain we are awake now. And if you wish to discuss anything, I would enjoy talking.
Solas starts by telling her that it's been a long time, which is a lot to unpack to begin with. He starts by telling her he's had an intimate relationship before, and the fact that it's not going on now tells us that it didn't work out for one reason or another. On top of that, it was a long time ago, meaning he hasn't pursued anything since. So then it's a big commitment for him. It means a lot to him because it's not something he just goes off and does casually. Then he tells her that things have always been easier for him in the Fade, which makes sense given that he's a dreamer. He isn't exactly fond of the physical world all that much, and he was once a spirit. He kissed her so readily because expressing himself somewhere he's comfortable was a lot easier than somewhere he has far less control. What a revelation. His hesitance comes with some interesting word choice, and I think it says a lot about his character. I am not certain this is the best idea. He's still working with the assumption of best versus worst ideas. Sure, it probably isn't a good idea to fall in love with someone you're A, unsure is really a person, B, already lying to, and C, plan to betray. He's still measuring the weight of this decision as if it's another tactic. And yes, it is worth him thinking over whether or not it is a good idea, but it's the fact that he doesn't say good idea, he says he is not certain if it is the best idea. An important choice of words. He finishes by telling her that it could lead to trouble, and I just want to point out the difference in perspective between what we know in retrospect, what Solas knows at this point, and what Llewellyn knows at this point. She knows just about nothing about his past, where he came from, or even if he has a family. He's not Dalish, not a city elf, and he's not from a circle tower. He's very different from her. Culturally, personality, yeah, sure, go with that. Experience-wise. And he knows that she's ignorant of just how different they are. From his perspective, obviously there's a lot more going on, especially since she is Dalish, and he is the Dreadwolf, and the complicated elf history. And he knows that she's ignorant of just how different they actually are. If they moved forward with a romantic relationship, it will make things incredibly complicated because no way could he keep that secret from her forever in a healthy relationship. And when she did find out who he was, as someone who believes in the elven gods and believes that fen'harel is this antagonistic trickster deity that does nothing but cause trouble and harm, how could she not either attack him, as the other Dalish have done, or just reproach him with this broken heart, thinking he was using her for some scheme or just for the fun of it? It will bring trouble to her, and it will bring trouble to him. But like I said, the word choice is interesting. He says, it could lead to trouble, not it will lead to trouble. Part of him believes maybe this could work out. There's room for trouble to be avoided, even if it's slim, and trouble is an odd way of putting it. Not heartbreak, not a bad outcome, specifically trouble, defined as something that is difficult or a cause of problems or distress, something that needs extra effort put into it. It's not doom or the end of the world, just trouble. And as Solas has been trying to tell the Inquisitor through the dream scene, he typically runs from trouble if it gets too much for him. He's giving her forewarning about what's going to happen. If you pick the continue romance option, Llewellyn assures him that she's willing to take a chance on that trouble, if he is. She acknowledges for him that she knows there could be troubles ahead, but being with him is worth that. All she needs is him to tell her she's worth it too. It's interesting that the basis of their relationship is this idea of something's not quite right. And there's this implication of a close relationship being a difficult thing for him, since it's been a long time and physical world things are not something that comes easily to him. His issues are specifically about having a lack of trust, and by this point he's made this very clear to both the player and the Inquisitor, although there are more clear indications of this later in the game, particularly with his personal quest, which, oh boy, in retrospect, oh boy. Once again Solas hesitates, and I can't help but wonder if he changed his answer in that second of pause. Could he have been about to say, I am, or I'm not? Maybe even a more honest, I want to be. But he settles on, I may be. And he wants time to think it over and consider things, which of course he leans towards yes. He can't stop thinking about the kiss.
Most people act with so little understanding of the world, but not you.
So what does this mean, Solas?
It means I have not forgotten the kiss.
The important thing is that he's expressed his worries, his discomfort and trust issues, and made it clear his last intimate relationship did not work out too well. And she tells him to take all the time he needs. No pressure, no time limit, just, I'm here, I'm willing to wait, don't worry about it. That's not just a matter of reassurance of respect, but she's not put off by him expressing his desire to take things slow, to really think about whether or not he's in a place where he wants to be in a romantic relationship. She's willing to wait for him, and most importantly, she does not pressure him for an answer. It's very sweet. It kind of feels like a part of him is healing from the prospect of having room to consider something, like falling in love, of trusting again and believing he can love and be loved. Llewellyn is this provider of safety, someone who understands the difficulties that come with being the one making the hard decisions, but still retains her curiosity, her compassion. She's a protector above all else, and their first conversation in Haven with the romance dialogue has her offering him her protection, and that's the first flirt. So it's fair to say that this sets the precedent for the theme/tone of their romance. I've got your back. You're not alone. I respect your right to freedom, and I'm willing to go out of my way to ensure your freedom. That's powerful. Solas thanks her and reiterates that he's not often thrown by things that happen in dreams. He's telling her that what happened between them was a rare thing. She's caught him off guard, and he wants her to know that it meant a great deal to him. It's not something he's going to forget anytime soon. And from Solas's perspective, as this immortal being who's lived for thousands of years, the idea that it's something that's going to stick with him means a lot. It means a lot more than Llewellyn would perceive it, because to Solas, that statement, that implication, means a whole lot more than what it's initially taken as. And then we have the discontinue romance option, and I just want to say I have picked this before and the romance can still continue despite it. I really want to say that that's part of the game and not a glitch because I've done it on multiple saves. I like picking this, it just runs with my Llewellyn and the role-playing I do for her. I really wanted to point this out because it's interesting that you can quote-unquote end it, but he'll still talk to you about the kiss later, depending on how you deal with his personal quest and his approval. He's very much falling in love with Llewellyn, and I can't ignore it. To actually end or cut off the romance, you either need to not kiss him during the dream scene or the balcony scene hammering home, no, we're not doing this.
Agreed. Best simply to be friends.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I will always remember surprising moments stolen in a dream. But I am reasonably certain we are awake now. And if you wish to discuss anything, I would enjoy talking.
This dialogue is pretty straight to the point. Llewellyn doesn't want the trouble he mentioned, and it feels like a prioritization of her duty over a relationship with him. Which is fair. Though it is interesting that she says, let's remain friends, when he basically says he doesn't have friends who aren't spirits later, which you could take as him making an exception for Llewellyn. Maybe he thinks on some level he sees her as a spirit, or he's just too relieved to not have to worry about falling in love that he lets the friendship line go unchallenged. He thanks her once again for giving him space to breathe. He appreciates it. It's very telling too that he says he's never going to forget what happened between them. It really mattered to him. It wasn't just a kiss, even if it led to nothing. For someone like Solas, this ancient and immortal being, this almost ethereal entity, given his spirited past, to say, I won't forget what happened between us, means a great deal. regardless of whether or not Llewellyn wants it to go forward. It says a lot about Llewellyn herself and the impact that she had on him, which is why I love this romance, honestly, among many things. It's healing and understanding for challenging someone to think outside their perspective, outside their comfort zone, but in a way that's full of genuine love and care. There's no pressure and it's semi-slow burn, but the scenes themselves have this comfortable intensity that feels cosmic, feels right. It feels like it was written in the stars, but it's still relatable and understandable. It's like mythology we're interacting with in this game, and I really like it. I'll never stop talking about it. So, in conclusion, Solas with this scene is purposefully letting us see a part of his true self. He doesn't just tell us, he shows us, this is who I am and what I'm capable of. Do with that what you will. It's a sort of declaration of, I'm committed to you and what we're fighting for, as the response from him before this scene implies.
Eventually, I was unable to find new areas in the Fade.
Why?
2 reasons. First, the Fade reflects the world around it. Unless I traveled, I would never find anything new. Second, the Fade reflects and is limited by our imaginations. To find interesting areas, one must be interesting.
Is this why you joined the Inquisition?
I joined the Inquisition because we were all in terrible danger. If Corypheus destroyed the world, I would have nowhere to lay my head while dreaming of the Fade.
Ah.
Inquisitor, that is why I joined, not why I stayed.
So Solas, by this point, has really begun to trust you. And yes, he does stay in the Inquisition no matter what, even if he hates you. But his attitude and ability to connect with the Inquisitor is entirely different. He's not just there with high approval, he's an active participant. A member of the team, a friend, a lover, an enemy. He is a character in and of himself, and his connection with the Inquisitor ties in really well with the game, and this scene just goes to show with high approval what can be done with a character in these kinds of games. It's why I love Dragon Age, I'm sure it's why many of you love Dragon Age, and it's worth talking about over and over again, because at the end of the day, that is the point of storytelling. It's powerful, it's real, it's ethereal, it's all of these magical buzzwords that are just very hard to not get philosophical about, because then it's crazy. But, you know, screw it, why not? We love it. There's a reason I'm talking about it, there's a reason you're watching this video, and many others like it. We have to keep talking about it because it matters. Storytelling at its core, characters like Solas matter. And with that, I believe that is where we will conclude. I will do other videos. I have so many scripts that I'm still writing. They're multiple hours long, so you're gonna have to bear with me because I need to make them right. Shout out to my wonderful channel members. Thank you for your support. And thank you everyone else for watching, for listening, however you happen to be engaging with this. It means a lot to me. I'm glad I can entertain you and maybe provide some insight into storytelling and all of its wondrous Dragon Age magic. That in a world that sentence makes sense, but yes, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a great day.